So now that the bottle is made, we can go and put some surfaces on here. Now, of course, there's a number of presets that we looked at earlier, and you can choose some of these scenes and copy some. You can actually go right to the materials themselves and pull some up, but I want to show you that making them is just as easy as pulling them up, and I'll show you how. Go down to Materials here in the Material Manager and go to File, New Material, and let's double click. All right, so for the first one, we're going to choose this as cap. It's our bottle cap. You can actually even say bottle cap, make it more deliberate. And I like the white, but we're going to make it a little bit whiter. So we'll click on that color, and we're just going to pump that up just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring up just the blue. Just tint to the blue, just a tad. Okay. Then we're going to come down to specularity. And I like the specular. We're going to keep the mode set to plastic. I think that should work pretty well. But let's just give it a little more width. Just kind of give it a little more intensity. Like that, okay? And that's going to help kind of flatten out that plastic a little bit. And for that, we're pretty much done for right now. Might want to go back and change that a little bit later. We're going to go File, New Material again. Double-click that new material, and we'll call this Bottle Plastic. You know, and it's very good to be specific about your names. A lot of people just want to call it plastic or Surface 1 or Surface 2. Be more specific as you're building them, because then when you save them out, over time, you're going to have a pretty nice library. And as your scene grows, you're going to know exactly what you're working with. Down to specularity, we'll increase it. Okay, so we got a much wider spot there, and we'll give it a little more height so it's just a little hotter. Okay, because this is our bottle itself, so it should be pretty shiny. And we'll tighten up that spot with just a little fall off. But from there, we want to put a little reflection on. Okay, now we don't want that much reflection, so we're going to bring that down about halfway. Now, the biggest thing with doing plastic or glass is, of course, the transparency. They all go hand in hand, the transparency, the reflection, and the environment. So we're going to do these all a little bit at a time. So we'll turn transparency on, but I'm going to bring that down. We don't want it 100% transparent just yet, because we want to be able to see it in our layout. Okay, and for the color, transparent color, I'm going to tint that just to the blue a little bit. Okay. So that's all we're going to do right now. We're going to come back and work with refraction and the absorption color and distance in a little bit. But right now, let's just surface a bottle. So I'm just going to click and drag that on. Do a quick render. And that's great. We got our bottle. But what about the cap? Well, you say, okay, well, I'll drag this on the cap. If you do a render, now the whole thing changes. So how do you determine which gets surfaced? Well, it's kind of like anything else. So let's put the bottle back on. Kind of the same rule that I've said in other training packages of Lightwave Moto. When something's selected, whatever you do applies to it. Right now, there's nothing selected, so of course, whatever I do is applied to everything. So let's get our cap isolated. So we'll go down to polygon mode here. Let's select the NURBS. Now, this is our main bottle. I need to make this editable in order to select it. Well, if I select the NURBS and I make that editable, look what happens. That's quite a mesh to work with there, and you know what? That's pretty messy. I don't need to actually make that NURB fully editable. I only need to make this one editable, which also makes things a lot easier to select. Of course, the NURB still applies when I render, but I don't need to edit that high density mesh. So we can leave that as is. Okay. So what I want to do now is take this cap, now which is really easy to select, take that first top part right there, and I can grow the selection. So if I press U on the keyboard, down at the bottom there you can see grow selection, one up from the bottom. Press the Y key, great. U, Y, U, Y, U, Y, okay. It gets a little tedious. So this gives me an opportunity to show you a different way to select. So let's do this. So expand out to our front view. Let's move this up. Let's choose our selection tool and hold the mouse down. And here you've got a lasso select, a polygonal select, and a rectangle select. That's great. So we'll just come down here and just select away. But there's a problem with that. It only selected what was visible. Okay, we're not getting everything. Even if we're in wireframe mode, we're not getting everything. The reason being is this guy right here, only select visible elements. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. In this case, we want that off. So now you can actually hold the Shift key, and you know what, and let's do this. Let's come back here to our regular select tool, click to deselect. Let's turn this back on, And let's get a little more precise here. There we go. And now, if you go back to a perspective view, just the entire cap is selected. Okay, so always remember to check that. And with that selected, I could take the bottle cap surface, drag it up, and drop it on. Now, don't let the layout confuse you. And I'll click to deselect, not to change that. Because right away, it suddenly looks like, uh-oh, it changed the whole bottle again. It didn't. Do a quick render, and you're going to see that it applied just to the cap. Okay? So you got to make sure that you're not relying entirely on your OpenGL view. And that could possibly be my video card, but it's also, make sure you check that transparency. All right, so that's a great way to work. We only made this surface editable, and now you can see our surface tags all right in there as well as we add those up. Okay, so far it's looking pretty good, but what about the rest? It's not looking so hot, is it? Got to do a little bit more. Well, part of doing glass and reflection, as I briefly mentioned, is all about the environment. It's about its surroundings. So let's start building some of the environment, and then we can go back and start adding detail into the bottle. So I'm going to come up here to my parametric objects, and let's just add a flat plane. Okay, we'll select the plane. You can even call it a ground. Let's choose our scale tool. I'll click right in the center, and we'll just scale that sucker up. Okay. We're just going to make a nice ground for this to sit on. Take our move tool and move that ground down underneath the bottle, or you can move the bottle up, whichever you want. Okay. And then I'm going to move it back down just into frame like that. And we'll move it like this. Do a quick render. Okay, now we've got a ground for it. And automatically you can see that the surface in that bottle looks different. Okay, because it's transparent, you're seeing through it. So now there's a number of other things we can do to make that even better. So let's create a new material. Let's double click. We'll call this guy ground. And I think we'll make this just something a little more interesting towards the browns. Kind of like that. A little chocolate brown color. And actually, I've got to do it for the color, not the transparency. My bad. There we go. Because we're not making this transparent, we're making it just a color. And I'm not going to worry too much about specularity right now, so we'll turn that off. But I do want a little reflection on this, so we'll turn that on. But just maybe about 5–10%, just a little bit. Okay. Do a quick render. Nothing happens, right? Let's apply it. Well, the ground is its own object. It's not the bottle, so I don't have to select anything. I could literally just drop it on there, do a render. It's not going to affect the bottle, and we got a nice little reflection going. Okay, so let's save the scene. And now let's add some light. So we'll come back up here. Let's add an area light, kind of like we did in our lampshade scene. And for this one, I'm actually going to move it up over here. Let's press S to get it to view. Do like that. And hit your model tool right there. And that way you can actually click and size it like that. It's going to give some beautiful shadows. We'll go to rotate. And we're going to rotate that down. Back to move. And we'll pull that up like that. Okay. And we'll come back for the camera a little bit later, do a little more creative. Okay, but now we've got a nice soft light. Okay, let's do one more thing. Let's take the light, and then we'll come down to the shadow and put area shadows on. One more render. And of course, it slows down a little bit because that's a good bit for it to calculate. You got to remember too, my system's about 4.5 years old, and I've got just a we're working on just a G5 here, so I know just about every one of you will be able to keep up. If you're on a G4, I don't know if you're going to be able to render this as well. But what is nice about doing this area light, putting a little reflection on two simple surfaces, we're already starting to get a really nice looking product shot. And this is just the beginning. We're going to add some nice reflections in there. I'm going to show you how we're going to create some really nice refraction. We're going to put a label on. And then we're going to add all the little bumps and grooves and stuff. We still got to shape the bottom of the bottle, and we actually have to shape the twirl little twist in here as well. But this gives us an idea of where we're going. And I think it's important also not just to set up the final environment for your glass and your plastic, but it's also important for you to get a feel of where your entire scene's going. If you set this scene up, this bottle up, entirely with its just default settings, as we did before the ground and the area light, you're probably going to have to go back and adjust those once you put the rest of the environment in. So this is just a good workflow that I've worked with for probably a good 15 years, where I do a little texturing, then I do a little scene, set up a little lighting, go back to the texturing, because all of it goes hand in hand. Not just one thing is important. It's all important when it comes together. So let's move on to the next video and start adding some more details.